Okay, we are back with round 2 of the War Room Esports Daily Debrief, episode 4. We have a very special guest with us today, Kelsey Moser from The Score. How's it going, Kelsey?
It's going pretty well. I've been enjoying my time talking to players, doing some interviews, except for with European teams because they lose. But
yeah, it's not going
otherwise,
so
good
well
time.
for the. It's not going so well for the my European brethren. So yeah, unlucky for them. With me, of course, we have our regular co-hosts. We have Nasser. Say hi, Nasser.
Hello.
Okay, and of course, rounding off, we have Shakarez.
Yeah, the guy that takes care of this fantastic production, as you guys can see.
Just the best production guy of all time. Okay, so I am your host, of course, Jarge, and I will be leading you through today's discussions about yesterday's. I think it's fair to say marked improvement of quality of games compared to the day before. I actually think that yesterday was okay. There was some pretty good games. We again had some upsets, as seems to be the world's theme. But I guess, is it really an upset now? So as you would expect, let's move on to the first game, INTZ versus AHQ. So who wants to take this? Nasser, I think you wanted to say something about AHQ.
Let's see. Yeah, let's look at the level 1. Oh.
So no draft?
Oh wait, AHQ INTZ. Sorry. Are we talking about draft here?
I want to mention some things real quick.
Yeah, you can talk about it.
So I think this is when they lock. Oh no, they haven't locked in. So this is the Rumble, the Pled, and they lock in the Kennen. So this is correct. I just wanted to talk a bit about INTZ's champ pools. This is like one of the most comfort picks for both Macau and Jockster, and they still shit the bed really hard. So it's like a really worrying side. Obviously, I wasn't expecting like this team to like really go out of groups. I was expecting them to get like 1-2 games most. But when they play their best bot lane and they still one of their best champions on bot lane and they still like really shit the bed, it's kind of worrying, in my opinion. Like Jockster's Bard was atrocious.
Sure. For me, I think the big story about AHQ, INTZ, the fact they started Westo, I actually think this is such a good call because what I've seen from INTZ is that especially their mid laner really doesn't have that great of a laning phase, and that's obviously one thing we saw from AHQ as a big exploitable weakness is Westo's laning phase. You can get that individual lead, you can pretty much put any champion in mid lane and it'll scale because Westo's never going to punish you in lane. But I think that with INTZ they have like the same weakness, but I think it's fair to say like slightly more of the same. I think Tokkers is actually a worse mid laner than Westor in like every way, So what we expect to see from AHQ is Westor roaming to side lanes quite a lot, and we saw that, we can actually move on to the first gank because this is something that we that kind of highlights what I was saying about how Westor likes to roam. So do we want to move on to the top gank?
Yeah, give me a
let's do it.
I need to find it.
There. Can we just highlight that like Ziv is a monster? Like Ziv is so good at this game.
Yeah,
I don't understand. Like this goes back to like the top 20 list from people placing Karsa above Ziv, and even though Ziv I think like had a good performance last year, and he was MVP of the LMS 2 splits in a row. It's really surprising that people underrate him just because I guess his opponents are bad in the LMS, but you just watch him play and you watch him last year. I don't know, he's pretty good.
I think to an extent, though, people underrated him because he doesn't typically play. Like, people praise this game a lot because he's playing this Jace carry, right? Yeah. But Ziv is usually the kind of guy who's just really, really good at playing the self-sufficient top, like the Oro, the Koro, the Odo Omne, the Trace type guy. Yeah. So I think that's why people underrate him a lot, because people tend to underrate those types of players.
But he's a bit like I think he reminds me a bit of Looper in that he doesn't really get like the most help, but he always just manages to find a way to get this lead, and he always manages to find a way to have a really good impact in the game and on the map. And I think that
Looper is a bad example. People have
is that a mischaracterization of Looper?
I think how it's playing on RNG, but
my poor knowledge of China.
I can have that discussion with Spawn another day. He's not here.
Yeah,
so.
sure.
Yeah, I got. Okay, let's.
We want to focus on these games. Yeah.
Yeah, let's look at this. Let's look at this gank. So, Nasa, I think you wanted to talk us through this.
I mean, it's a bad idea to gank top at this point because if you look, Jace has 9 minions, 9 or 10 minions. So, and he's just like in between the minions. So how are you gonna Q the Jace, and you're gonna tank all of this? Yang is at 75% health, and I think it was just a bad idea to gank top at this point because
also Jace is a level up. Like, let's not.
Yeah, he's a level up.
Yang hasn't killed.
And just notice like the rest of the map, like where INTZ has pressure. I feel like at this point of the game, when Lily is level 4 and top is being pushed in this way, he shouldn't be ganking top. He should be working towards bot side, and then maybe at like level 6, they can attempt a good gank on the Jace. It's just about time to gank top, in my opinion.
In the post-game interview also, Ziv said that they expected the gank top, so he built up the wave. So it was just in general, like, based on Revolta's pathing, you can see that he was planning to go for the top gank, and AHQ prepared for it by just building the wave really well, which meant that Revolta either had to decide that he was just going to waste his time, or he was going to do the gank anyway. So
and then... So this gank we know how Jace is so snowballing from the games we've seen so far, and Nidalee was already pressuring the top side, like he was stealing camps from Revolta earlier on. So now, literally, Nidalee can, like, she has now 3 sides of the jungle for herself right now because of what happened top lane. And we then see INTZ finally realize, okay, we need to play more around bottom lane. And so right after this, a few moments after this, we see INTZ work their way towards bot side. And I think this was really a really good answer from INTZ to try to get back into the game and did equalize the gold. We see they noticed that Malzahar backed and that they expected Nidalee to go to clear her blue and probably go to Lee Sin's red after that because of the pressure that HQ has on the top side of the map. So I think it was really smart, really well predicted. Are we showing the clip?
No, I was just gonna say that, like, before you even get to that dive bot lane, like, you have the moment where I think it's important to mention that once Jace is ahead and they know it's Jace and they know it's Nidalee, like Nidalee will invade, especially when she has a stronger top laner. INTZ need to pink topside because Mountain was allowed to just go inside INTZ's top jungle over and over again, and I think that INTZ needed a pink ward at the entrance to red, so behind red buff. They need a pink ward there, and then they need a pink on try, so they can spot Nidalee going in, because that's what ends up giving Jace the second kill.
Can they really contest that jungle though? Because Jace is always going to pressure, Westo is always going to run
It's not about contesting; it's about seeing the Nidalee coming and backing off.
I mean, I think they just shouldn't overextend topside after the first gank, basically. Because you don't need the vision investment if you know that there's going to be follow-up.
But Kennen is under turret
also, like,
the second time.
Yeah, but if he leaves the tower, it's still going to be the same bad situation where he's going to miss minions and go. Like, the top lane is screwed. He's screwed. Yeah. Whether he dies, whether or not, he's screwed.
I have a follow-up question. What if INTZ do a delayed swap here? It's past 5. I mean, it's past 5 minutes.
Depends. Like, it depends how they do it, because the delayed swap can go really badly. Like, if HQ is ready on the bottom side to all in on that tower, they're always going to get that tower first, and then you get the. And then, like, kind of your only lane with any chance of, like, being able to carry the game, which is your bottom lane at this point, is, like, just gets, like, really far behind the Sivir. And then what's going to happen then is you're just going to get the 3 full lane push, which we eventually be saw in the mid game anyway. So, I mean, like, yeah, maybe if INTZ can find a really lucky timing to get it, like, I think, yeah, sure, maybe a delayed lane swap can work, but it's going to be super hard, especially with the amount of pressure that Jace is putting on the top lane, because they're never going to have a way to take the top tower.
You usually do the delayed swap when your top is ahead, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've seen it done when bottom lane is behind.
I think AHQ
I think it can work. Like if
AHQ did the delayed swap.
Yeah.
And it worked out pretty well. So
Lee Sin is bot side. If Lee Sin just shoves bot lane and they shove, I think that if they shove bot lane and they try it, I think it might be better than just letting Kennen die.
Honestly, that's a good point, Josh. HQ should have lane swap.
Yeah,
they should have done the delay swap, and they would have got top tower. Because Lee Sin's gonna work towards his bottom side right now. That would have been a good thing for HQ to do. But yeah, going back to what INTZ did to respond to all this top pressure from AHQ, can we show that clip?
Yeah,
yep.
Sure. So, you mean like when they attempted dive bot lane, right?
Yes.
So, should be... Okay. So here's the full clip.
Yeah, so
now.
Yeah. So here, I think INTZ knew that Nidalee is going to be topside because her blue is spawning and Lee Sin's red's going to be spawning right after. And like I said, the amount of pressure HQ has top, Nidalee is going to play towards topside.
But it's such a bad execution.
From INTZ, like they didn't get the kills, right?
I think they could get a kill here if they set up better.
Yeah.
I don't think
the problem here is that. What I think is that yes, they get the tower, but you don't really deny much from the Sivir. She still right after this, the CS will equalize moments later, and top lane is still screwed. Like top lane is still so far ahead. Nidalee is so far ahead. She has like free roam on the map. Malzahar didn't get punished early on, so he's gonna have free scaling. So, this response from INTZ was good. But it was not enough to, help them win the game because
I think this response
HQ had so much pressure.
Yeah, this response is it's okay. Like taking the spot lane tower is fine, but it's kind of like it's like a Hail Mary at this point because if AHQ's in place to pressure any other point of the map, they could trade, and at best you're getting a trade, which is decent when you're behind, but it's only really going to help you win the game if you can then transition that into something else, like they go mid and group or something. Sorry, Kelsey, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I actually don't know why you're criticizing INTZ's moves here that much, because not only did they get the turret, but they go mid and they answer AHQ's response play, which is to push to group mid and push, and they immediately get the kill on Mountain. So I don't see anything wrong with this play, and it's actually an opening to get INTZ back in the game.
Yeah.
And in general, with AHQ picking up momentum, it has nothing to do with this play giving HQ any part of the game or anything. In my opinion, it's just they have top control and
that's not my point at all. My point was that Shaka mentioned that could have gone better. Maybe they could get a kill.
Yeah.
I like the response from INTZ.
No, the move is good.
It was the correct play to make.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's still not enough to counteract the pressure that they have from the top side and from the jungle. It definitely equalized gold, but as we see, as the game keeps going, Jace pulls so much pressure top, and HQ ends up getting dragon. They end up getting 2 towers bot lane. They get a pick mid, and I think that's all because of the pressure that Jace is pulling towards him.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
it's the correct play.
I think the story of this game for me was very much that INTZ. You can put a large amount of this game on the fact that Ziv was so far ahead, but I also think it highlighted the real weaknesses of having a team with weak laners. I think that Yang is a good laner, but I think across the board, the mid and the bottom lane are just really not that strong. And I think this is really showcased this in this game, because in no universe should you have 4 towers at 13 minutes. Even with a super fed top laner, I think that the fact that they managed to chip down all the 3 towers at the same time, I think was HQ's not really known for its superstar great laners anyway. And Albus are okay, but they're not the kind of 2v2 to smash you and take your tower.
But they're a team that snowballs early leads.
Yeah.
I don't really think that. I just think it was HQ actually surprisingly played the siege comp really well. Like, we've seen people screw up the siege comp a lot, but they used the threat of Jace to be able to, like, after they get the top tower, rotate to other lanes and then push people off of it. So I don't necessarily think it's because, like, Talkers and Macau are bad. Because, like, even if you look, it's not so much that their laning phase was bad, because they had points where they were up in CS. And maybe if you want to criticize them for something, it's that, okay, well, Talkers took maybe a lame bully pick, and this is a pick he's known for anyway, so this isn't not, it's like a comfortable pick for him, Cassiopeia. And then they didn't necessarily do anything off that because Westor was just going to rotate anyway, because Cassiopeia should be able to get a lot of pressure onto the Malzahar early in the laning phase anyway. But
the biggest problem was focusing topside.
Yeah, the biggest problem was just the AHQ, in my opinion, played the rotation game a lot better after they got the top tower, and it had less to do with the individual lane matchups then.
Okay,
to summarize, I want to make sure, like, if Kelsey agrees, is that Jace having that pressure topside was what gave them the better opportunity to play the rotation game.
Yeah, and INTZ, I think, made some smart moves. They just couldn't fully counteract the way the AHQ were playing or with their lead.
I think INTZ played okay. I actually want to kind of wrap this up, but I do have one more question I want to ask. I don't know how people feel about this, but I mean, I look at INTZ's comp, and if I was to make a game plan of this comp, I would definitely look into pressure bottom side, because you have double range into range melee, and they have like really good setup with the Ash Bard. And if you get a top TP, like the Kennen's always going to have more impact in a TP play than Jace because of the way his ult works. So I think definitely if I was like INTZ, I'd be looking to pressure bot side here. So I think just the game plan of looking to pressure top, I'd have tried to set up this game in a much different way. But I guess that comes down to INTZ's playstyle, and they kind of win and lose based on what I've seen. They kind of win and lose about whether or not Revolter and Yang go off.
That's the thing, though. Stylistically, like, if you look at CBLOL and other past tournaments, INTZ got a lot of wins, and their main playstyle was getting bot lane ahead. And that's why, in an interview, Revolt even said that they look a lot at EDG for their playstyle, is because, like, they usually get bot ahead. And I think if you get bot ahead, you kind of hide the weakness, you know? That they're a bad lane. Because Macau is a good team fighter. So.
Sure, that's fair.
I would just say it was specifically for HQ, because they knew that HQ would play on top, especially with this comp, and so they wanted to cut off the Jace from getting ahead.
Okay, so does anyone have anything else to say about this game before we move on to EDG?
Nope.
I think that's everything.
Okay, so EDG H2K. So obviously, let's open with the draft for this game. Definitely, I think we need to talk about this draft. So I have a question, actually. I mean, I could be wrong here, and I'm not like super strong on like draft. It's never been like a super strong point for me, but I don't understand why they wouldn't pick a Tom Kench here.
Who in particular?
HDK for their last pick.
They love the karma.
I think part of it is against UDG. A lot of people focus on Clear Love and like preventing Clear Love from doing things, but and this is why, like, the thing that tilted me the most was actually that they banned Nami, because I think that the key for EDG is to keep Mako from roaming, because Clear Love is actually pretty stingy about not really going to places that if he doesn't know where the enemy jungler is so much. So the fact that Mako roams and is able to place like initial vision is very important for EDG. So I was kind of assuming that they would pick like Karma, they would get the push on bot, and then they would just like hope that Mako has Nami or something, and then he would stay in lane. But instead they banned Nami, and then they gave EDG a roaming champion. And even so, like, you have Karma against Alistar, you should be able to just keep the wave pushed. But yeah, I think that was kind of their thought process, is just that we're going to get Karma and we're going to push the wave.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and they traditionally really love the Karma.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
reasons particularly.
I don't think it's such a bad idea picking like the pressure matchup into Deft and Mako. especially when like HGK really wants to play around their bottom lane. Like, it's definitely something that they stylistically as a team really like to do. I know like Figgiven really likes his lane bullies and stuff. So I just like, for me, it just felt very much like the Tonkench really would have done a lot more for their comp in the mid game than maybe the Karma would.
Sure. I don't know. Maybe it could be because Vander had a bad performance on Tahm Kench in playoffs.
Yeah.
I can't remember if he played it. Yeah, he didn't play in the regionals anyways. But yeah, he didn't play it that well in playoffs, so that might be a reason. Maybe he's not comfortable on it. And you know, you're playing with Forgiven. Forgiven wants to be lane dominant.
Sure. Okay.
On top of that, on this draft, I really like from HCK the Poppy ban, because what they realized is that it's turning into carry top meta, and the only tank we're seeing right now that can kind of resist the carry tops is Poppy. Because
there's a bit of Gnar, but I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, Gnar, I don't consider him completely tanky. He's a bit of a carry.
Yeah.
Poppy's the only like, you know, tank utility classification. So I really like that ban, and it forces. Like, I was wondering, okay, so how's EDG gonna respond? Are they gonna maybe go back to the Maokai and Echo, because they played those champions when they weren't meta? So, but then they picked the Aurelia into the Rumble, which is sort of good if Aurelia can get past the early laning phase. She can really dominate Rumble in the split push. But it was still worrying because, as Kelsey maybe wants to talk a bit more about, EDG doesn't really play towards top side.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they will just put Mouse on Aurelia, and Mouse will sometimes just do like really daring things on Aurelia, and I think that they like to use the fact that Mouse can sometimes plays like a bait Aurelia playstyle, which is imperfect, right? Because he's still kind of an inexperienced player, and I feel like he doesn't really have as good a grasp on where the enemy jungler is. And the team has expressed that this is a failing in some of their communication, as they don't always tell Mouse like when they know that the enemy jungler will be topside. The other aspect is I think he considers it a comfort pick. Like, Mouse isn't a super good player, so like him being on a comfort pick doesn't mean he's gonna play well. It's just a thing. I know that they wanted to ban the Kennen and Gnar because they said that we wanted to ban these champions that we thought that Odoamne was strong on, and that are also good counter picks. So they didn't, because they knew they were going to pick their top champ early.
Okay. Even though Odoamne ended up picking it first here.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just didn't know that H2K don't really ever counter pick top either. So.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Nidalee.
Yeah, let's talk about the Nidalee, because I actually think that the Nidalee was like, it was okay, but I'd have liked to have seen like more aggressive Nidalee from Clearlove. But I know, Kelsey, you disagree with this point.
We'll talk about the pathing in game, but like, how is Clearlove and Nidalee traditionally?
I think people have this weird misconception about not just Clearlove but junglers, is that to be a good jungler, you just have to be like super aggressive, and gank and lane pressure is the only thing that matters. Yeah. But I would say that, so yeah, we'll talk about the pathing more specifically because I'll highlight those parts. But I would say that Clearlove is not like the stereotypical aggressive jungler, and the thing that people really respect him about is how adaptable his pathing is to what the other jungler is doing and how he responds to what the other jungler does. So I think that that's kind of the point to highlight there. And because of how efficient and fast Nidalee is, like, he's able to do that, and EDG kind of transition into this poke comp where they make a lot of cross map plays with the Nidalee, which I think is probably the most important thing to highlight about it. Like, you're not going to play Nidalee the same way as a Lee Sin. Lee Sin is going to be a super early jungle ganker and things like this. So you can criticize maybe him for not responding to that, but there are, again, we'll point to a key instance of this later.
Sure. Let's use that to bring up the first clip. So we do we have this clip?
Yes, we want... Wait, we want the first blood?
Do you want to show the level 1 first? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So the whole level 1?
So,
okay.
Yeah, just here.
Yeah.
So this was something I talked about either yesterday or the day before about checking brushes. You have a Karma, you have an Ezreal. Alright, so it's not here, but in a few seconds they just walk into the brush, and maybe you talk to one of the players, Kelsey, or you talk to someone who knows more about this. But why do you think that happened?
Why do I think H2K did that?
Why did they do that?
I honestly don't know. It's funny because if you go back to 2015 even, like EDG scouted H2K's level 1 and invaded around red buff actually. It was a very similar situation and just got like a super early advantage off that. Like EDG love to scout the enemy team's level 1s and kind of mess with them. I don't know if they even have to do that here, but yeah, I don't know why they did that. But after they burned their flashes, like the entire point of having the Karma is kind of gone, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't really get the advantage in the lane that you want from that anyway. And they picked the Ezreal very obviously to deny Deft his best champion, and now you're just kind of having a fun time.
Yeah, and when Karma flashes down and Alistar flash is still up, if the jungler ever comes, Alistar can just flash pulverize. It's just like
it is over.
Yeah, so this is a bit weird. So what is exactly what I don't understand from this whole thing is, what is the whole point from Vander doing this? Vander and Forgiven doing this? Are they trying to look if H2K are doing a camp? If EDG are doing a camp?
Basically,
like why would you path that way?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's why I'm
pathing
confused.
That way is really bad. But I think the idea is they want to zone, because with double range you have that advantage to be able to zone a range melee off the wave, and you can like at the very first wave you can zone them off if they're taking a camp. So they wanted to check to make sure that EDG was like either taking a camp or zone them off if they weren't. So it's like the right thought, but completely the wrong execution. Like there's no way you should be checking the brush,
I think go the other way and use your Qs to check the brush.
Yeah, just I don't know. And then Vander like sits in the brush and tries to brush camp when Def's got flash up and his auto crit. It's like, come on, man.
And if you watch UDG games, I think like 45% of their starts are bot lane invades enemy camp, and most of them are when they're on blue side. So they would much rather invade the opponent team and push them off of their Gromp, the enemy duo lane, and push them off of their Gromp, then start their Krugs camp. So.
Okay, so let's move on from this point and move on to the next bit. So we have a clip of the bottom lane gank.
Yeah. So on cast, they talked about how Clearlove isn't applying, like he's not like pressuring. Like this was sort of Clearlove's fault for this gank. So if we see here, Nidalee pinged. No, can we go back? Because this is go back to where Nidalee.
From the beginning. Yeah. So
Nidalee sees Lee Sin at Raptors and she pings him, and then when she's moving away, she pings that Lee Sin is gonna be at his wolves, which is the natural thing for junglers to do. And so Mako and Deft know that Lee Sin is gonna be in his bot side. And they're pushing in the wave. So as you see here, they're pushing it hard. But what Jankos does is he skips his wolves instead.
Yep.
You see the ping there from EDG, and the bot lane is pinging the wave so that they can push it fast. The thing is, they expected Jankos to be doing his wolves so that they wouldn't be ganked. Can you go back just a few more moments where they were pushing the lane?
And you can even see Clearlove like ward, because he knows the logical path, and Clearlove wards river like after Jankos leaves. So
I just wanted to mention that just for the viewers, what EDG is trying to do here. What EDG is trying to do here is they're trying to push hard. So basically, they're trying to time it in a way where when Jankos finishes wolves, the wave is starting to bounce back and push push to their side. Because if a wave meets closer to your side, it means it's going to push back. So that's what they were trying to do. But I think Jankos read this well.
Yeah, but Jankos just skipped his camps, which is smart from him, and he went straight bottom.
That's
like you as the enemy team, you don't really expect that to happen.
Yeah. That's why I think it's a good read by Jankos.
Yeah, it's a good read, but it's also like pretty risky because if this gank doesn't work, then Jankos like falls pretty far behind. But I think it's a great move from Jankos. I think this is actually.
I think
this is more about what Jankos likes to do, and this is like quintessential Jankos. You know, he's really good at snowballing his lanes and finding those like key areas to snowball lanes.
He needs to take this risk though, in my opinion, because his bot lane is really behind.
Yeah, for sure. It's also the interesting thing about it is usually so EDG will push out the wave, and then what they would have done from there is so like Jankos would, if he studies how EDG plays, would know he's like basically screwed if he doesn't make this play, because bot lane will usually push the wave, and then Mako will go and he'll ward like the blue buff off of that push, and then Klilov will invade. And they would probably make a play on Jankos from there, because this is like the standard EDG type plays. Like you track the enemy jungler around bot side from that area, and you invade on his bot side camp. And so I think that like if he was informed of how EDG kind of do that sort of thing, then he definitely made the right decision.
Sure. So I think we have something else to say about this as well. Nasa, you wanted to talk about Death's start, his item build?
Yeah, so if viewers noticed, Death started with a longsword and triple pot instead of Doran's Ring. And I think I like the idea because he's going for extra sustain against the double poke bottom lane. And the only thing you really miss is, I think, how much health is on the Doran's? 40? 80 health, but you get more effective health from 3 potions of these biscuits.
Yeah. It's like 150 plus 35 or something, isn't it?
Yeah. The other thing is that it would also be, you'll also spike earlier if he went for the Ghost Blade and the Serrated Dirk, but he ended up going for Essence Reaver, which I don't really agree, but preference.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can look at like HDK's team, and it's like, apart from like Adewamne, who's going to naturally go into Zhonya's versus a Rumble, there's not really going to be like that much armor on HDK, so I think maybe the armor pen build from Jhin would have been like slightly more efficient. So that's definitely something I think I would like to see from Deft.
I mean, there's
also another thing with the Dorans. Oh, sorry, one more thing with the Dorans is that Jhin isn't really an auto attack champion, so you don't really get much from the lifesteal.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that this is like a lane that will all-in you. It just pokes you, so the effective health is more useful than the effective
max
health than the max HP. Exactly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that there's an argument you can make against the armor pen build. Like there's no real tank on H2K, but they all build armor items. So Ezreal's going Iceborne probably.
But they're not going to go like full armor. I think the armor pen build is more efficient. After 2 armor items, right? It's like before 2 armor items, I think the armor pen build is like more efficient. I think that's what I understand about it. And nobody's really going to get more than 1 armor item on this team, apart from like Lee Sin late game. And even then, it's like maybe because even like the Iceborne doesn't give you that much armor. It's not like loads. I think it's like 40.
Yeah, it's like 65 actually.
Really? Holy shit! I didn't realize it was that much. Yeah, and like Rumble's gonna. I mean, even that's not like enough to justify like going Essence Reaver build for me. And the Rumble's gonna go like Zhonya's, which is again, that's like probably like 60 or something. I don't know 100% off the top of my head, but like none of them are gonna naturally go into an item path that has like more than 1 armor item until like really late on. But then, you know, like I think the Jin's gonna snowball super, especially when we have this huge lead. You know.
Okay, that's.
But fair. Yeah. Let's move on to the next bit. So, Kelsey, do you want to talk a little bit about Scout versus Pawn? Because I think that was one of the things that people were looking at as they picked Scout. I mean, for me, I think Scout played really well this game, but I want your take on this particular subject.
So I think that I'm not going to get into a lot of the details, but I think that Scout is a player that's somewhat like Mouse in that he's young and inexperienced, and so the solo laners in particular will have trouble being able to gauge when the enemy jungler is going to come pressure. And since EDG is traditionally a team that really wants to play around like snowballing bottom and creating bottom lane pressure with clear love. They need solo laners who are more kind of aware of that situation. Pawn's role traditionally has been a lot more like how Scout played this game, whereas he will go top or he'll try to create mid lane pressure individually and pull the jungler away from bottom lane. So I think that that's something that Scout has worked to try to emulate a little bit over time. And him doing more roam style play is really good because he's less vulnerable in lane that way.
Sure. I actually think Scout played pretty well. I think he definitely his I think he roamed to top at some point.
I want
to it was super good roam. So actually, can we bring that clip up?
This was a huge mistake by H2K though, because they even ping. Yeah, they even ping that Syndra's coming. Look at that ping.
Yeah.
And Jankos decides to stay. I mean, I don't know, a top laner and a mid laner versus at least a jungler and a top laner, and like they have a Syndra who has, you know, she's hit her, you know, power spike with her ult.
Yeah.
Let's ignore the mechanical misplays.
Like look at, like she misses like 2 abilities and she
still wins.
Yeah,
because she gets the
Syndra's
balls
pretty
out.
fucking broken.
I mean, maybe that's the decision because I feel like Odoamne and Jankos are better players than Mouse and Scout. So
what a hell of a call to make. Like, hey, they're bad players. Let's just outplay them 2v2. That sounds like a H2K bottom thing. I wouldn't expect that from Jankos at Odoamne.
I mean, I would expect it from Jankos, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Jankos.
Maybe. But yeah, so does anyone have anything else they want to say about this game? Do we want to talk about the mid game a bit and how EDG closed?
I mean, I want to talk about how I think Clearlove played this. So there were criticisms that maybe Clearlove is not having a good tournament and maybe highlighting this game as one. I think the only mistake Clearlove really did this game was getting caught in River, but that was kind of like a good play by H2K. Outside of that, I think he did what a Nidalee is supposed to do, and Crepo talked about this a lot post game. And I thought everything he said was like completely true. He played Nidalee, he outfarmed the enemy jungler, he invaded, he told his laners where Lee Sin is going to be. When what's his face? Mouse started split pushing, he covered him pretty well. I don't think we naturally saw that in the LPL. And I thought he did really well this game. Maybe it was something they learned from the last earlier game they played versus INTZ, was just playing around top lane a bit more, at least in split push situations. We have a clip even. Is this it? Yeah, like just... And this isn't even the first example. There are previous examples where he doesn't really gank, but he's just like there to support Mouse with vision and like stealing camps from Jankos.
And presence
it
counts a lot.
actually... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the presence counts a lot as a jungler.
Yes.
It really matters. The only thing I disliked about is like a minor thing about his build. Athene's Nidalee is fine. I just think that he could do more with Rylai's probably. But the 20% CDR just lets him play like that style that Nasser was talking about, where he supports his lanes. And like he can just go into a lane and heal someone for 500 HP. And the presence of mind that the enemy jungler is there, and he just like healed the opponent you chunked for 500 HP is like huge.
Yeah. If anything, like if I want viewers to learn, like discard everything I say. The only thing I want you to learn from me is about jungling and jungle pressure. Jungle pressure isn't just about ganking lanes. It's about finding the enemy jungler, telling your laners where the enemy jungler is, stealing his camps, creating vision for your laners. That's really what jungling is about. And then from that pressure in the enemy jungle, you can translate it into ganks and dives, etc.
And the one thing that I want to stress is that I think this is something they started doing in the H2K series actually, is the mouse covering more often. It's actually something very similar to how G2 used to play lane swaps, right? Is after the tower would be done, they would basically just have expect freeze by a turret, and then like they would bait someone to overextend to where expect was, and then trick would gank. And it's eerily similar to how they're doing this with Clearlove and Mouse, both in the AHQ series. Like, I almost felt like there was that one trade in that game that I thought was very clever, where their bot lane was pushing the turret really hard to sort of force AHQ to answer topside, and as a result, they got the first turret gold, AHQ, but then Mouse was able to just freeze, and Clearlove kept answering any baits that they did. So I think that that's something that they've been playing more like since the INTZ game. Mm-hmm. I also don't know if it's a coincidence, because I do know EDG and G2 have scrimmed each other a lot, so I feel like G2 learned all the bad things that EDG does. And then...
Yeah, that's some pretty harsh criticism right there.
Okay, so shall we move on to the deciding team fight of this game? I think it's the fight basically decides everything.
This is why, guys, Athene's is a broken item on Nidalee. Let's see here.
Is it really, though? Oh, this tilts me so hard. Nidalee is not a heal champion. Why does she even have a heal? Why does a champion with so much early pressure have a fucking heal?
550.
See that, guys?
50. Oh, that's so disgusting.
Mouse would have died by now. Honestly, should have died.
Yeah, he should have died.
Yeah, that's like 2 Qs from Vladimir. That's an auto attack and a Q from Ezreal. That's a full karma channeled Q. Like, that's a Lee Sin Q auto Q. That's like, I mean, come on, man, that's so stupid.
I just
think it's hilarious that Clearlove is a higher level than us. Anyway.
What
that's Nidalee. This is why you ban Nidalee.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just Nidalee, dude. Like, if Nidalee gets into mid game with like a decent lead and she can just like freely go wherever she wants, she gets to farm like 3 quadrants faster than anyone can farm like 2.
Yep.
It's pretty stupid.
Like, Clearlove got to level 18. Clearlove and Mouse were the 2 first players to get to level 18 this game.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't see the Clearlove criticism where they talk about like his bad games. Like, legit, I thought he was the best ganking Hecarim I have ever seen. Like, I've never seen someone level 3.
Because nobody ganks on Hecarim, that's why.
Yeah, but like, have you ever seen a Hecarim gank 2 lanes in a row?
No,
successfully?
It's so
level
hard.
3?
Like, the thing is, it's okay, sure, like, but there's an argument to be made, like, why would that go into a game plan? Because, like, Hecarim as a champion shouldn't be ganking, like, really. Like, sure, if the enemy fucks up and, like, they're overextending, give you a free gank, then yeah, take it. And I think Clearlove's identification of, like, when lanes are vulnerable is really good, and I think that's something he's really good at. But let's not like make out that like somebody ganking on Hecarim is this like really great thing, because Hecarim shouldn't be ganking. That's really not how you want to be playing the champion. I think if a good team is against a good team, like, you can't really rely on like this Hecarim being able to gank all the lanes all the time pre-6.
It's a cheese strategy that LPL teams will use. Like, I mean, MLXG had some success with it, so it's something that you can't rely on doing a lot, but you can surprise teams with a ganking Hecarim.
But what they said in post-game that really interested me is, I don't remember who was interviewed in post-game. I think it was Clearlove, actually. In the other game where he played Hecarim, he said that Hecarim is a good ganking jungler situationally. Like, if your comp permits it. And
everyone's a good ganking jungler situationally.
No. Like, in that, I know, but like, I just think that there's this thing where you look at Hecarim,
LPL.
Yeah.
You look at Hecarim as a farming jungler, and you don't ever think he'll gank. But yeah, let's move on.
Okay, so I wanna transition to the next game. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about EDG HTK? No. Okay,
let Vander 2v2. I mean, let Forgiven 2v2.
Yeah, let Forgiven 1v1. I think he doesn't really want his support anymore. Let's move on to ANX and G2. So obviously, first thing to talk about this game is the draft. Who wants to take this one?
Yeah, I can start.
Go ahead.
I think it was super disrespectful to not ban the brand.
And the Empyre.
Maybe it's because, I mean, you need to ban the Nidalee, I think, and you need to ban the Syndra, unless you can play like Aurelion Sol or something. I think the brand was the big one, just because. So I don't think Envy is the big deal because he can counterpick it. But Brand, we've seen even like G2 and CLG ban it. And I think that you haven't really. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I quickly follow up? Like, if you can counterpick it, why are you picking Orianna? Orianna's not a counterpick. Like,
exactly.
This says to me, no. This is like, I think this is really important. This says to me that Perks doesn't have a counterpick, which means that he shouldn't be leaving up Anivia. Like, that for me is like, I think we should really highlight that fact.
Okay, so one is that I think the Brand has higher priority as a ban because it's not something I don't think they've ever played against it. So that's one. The second is, yeah, they needed to think about the Anivia and what to pick against it, because the Orianna did not work, as we're going to show in a bit. And as for the rest of this draft, like, I think ANX draft is super, super good. If one person gets CC'd, there's going to be so much follow-up CC and burst. Like, Poppy has synergy with the Anivia wall, Elise Cocoon, Brand stun, and like AoE splash.
Yeah.
Like, holy, this was such a good comp to watch.
You could just anywhere when more than one like G2 isn't like a choke point, it's over. There's so much like AoE burst damage. I mean, even Lucian in a choke point actually does quite a lot of damage because his Q is like a large part of his damage.
And culling, it's hard. It's easier to hit in a choke point.
Yeah, it's like this. It's just and Anivia creates choke points.
I just want to, I was going to say that. Even if it's an open point, we saw that Anivia would create choke points with wall. Kira's like fantastic with Anivia. So I think this is a bit of a disrespectful draft from G2, and they paid quite the high price for it. I just wanted to mention as well that 4 of these 5 champions on ANX's side are their most comfortable champions. 4 out of 5. Like, Smurf said he's like... in the interview, Kira said that Smurf is like most comfortable on Poppy. Then you have like Kira on Anivia, Brand on Liquid on Brand. A Miracle is not a star AD carry. He's probably the weakest link in this team actually. But like if you can give him comfort, it's gonna be Jhin or Lucian. So like they just picked comfort champions. They just got comfort champions all over the team, and they actually got some tier 1 champions as well. Like Elise is S tier, so I think it's a pretty good draft for them.
Sure. So I have a question. Does anyone know the Orianna and Anivia matchup, or is that naturally just like super hard winning lane for Anivia, or does Perks just like not understand how to play that lane? Because what I saw was him like.
We can show the clip right now.
Super low. Yeah.
Can we show the clip?
Can we show the clip? I think we should highlight like Perks' laning in this game because
we can show it.
Perks is not having a good tournament, man.
And I want to emphasize that Kira I believe is low masters.
Yeah. I'm going to roll the clip.
I mean, that's less relevant. I unfortunately do not know the matchup very well. I do know, however, that Anivia is a really strong comfort pick for Kira. So
I will mention as well. Sorry.
I don't know if Perks's playstyle is really interesting because it's very much about kind of trying to bait out certain aspects of how the other mid laner will play. But it's hard for him to execute this playstyle really well when he doesn't have a champion with escapes. So I think he's just really bad at judging his range. So it's hard for me to determine how I feel bad because I should know matchups better than I do, but mid especially is like where I'm really bad at matchups.
So you call that interesting. In Europe we call that boosted, Kelsey. In regards to Perks. I just wanted to mention that
it was a playstyle that was effective in spring, right? Because you had a lot of champions that could play that style.
But I wanted to mention that Anivia doesn't even have Thunderlords here, so and he still wins lane pretty hard. With Thunderlords, I think the Perks would even have a harder time. But Kira's obviously going for the team fight, where if he lands like a QE combo, he gets the Storm Raiders and is allowed to like skirt around the team fight. So, shall I roll this clip, this level 2 trade?
Yeah.
Sure. So, while we're here, I think there's 2 things to say about this matchup. Like, number one, like, either, if Anivia beats Orianna in lane, like, there's no reason why Perks should ever pick this champion. And if Perks does think he can win this matchup, it's really on him to win this matchup. So, I think either way, Perks really has a lot to answer.
I mean, not even winning it, but at least going even. He's forced to burn both his pots at level 2. and he needs to back early, and so he misses gold XP and he loses control of the mid wave. And then that's what ended up leading to the eventual gank and first blood.
I think Orianna can handle this matchup. I don't know the matchup personally because I don't play either of the champions, but like, I think it favors Anivia, but Orianna can handle it. But obviously Perks can't. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you can't play the matchup, don't play it. Like this is Worlds, man. You had 3 weeks to improve your champion pool. That should be like a good player will have a good champion pool.
And I like I like when Orianna has like some natural synergy with the champions on her team, and it feels like she doesn't really have so much synergy here.
There's a bit with Lee Sin, but only if you're like Bjerg's Van level of like synergy, you know. And I don't see Trick and Perks having that great synergy. I mean, we touched on this in the last episode about how I don't think Perks has great synergy with his team. I think he kind of operates in his kind of own world. And if he can do the classic, you know what, we can reference that Abdo thread where he says like a good mid laner will draw the jungler to his lane but not die, which is how he categorizes Faker. I think that's the way Perks kind of sees himself wanting to play. You know, he wants to draw pressure into his lane but not die, and he can do that really well on escape champions. But when he plays these like control mages with no escapes, and you know, a weak speed buff is kind of all he has. I think what Kelsey said is really true. I think he just maybe overestimates like how safe he is in lane.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the Baron sneak, which is the second time ANX have done this in the tournament. So it wasn't just a one-off thing. They know how to do it. So context here is they just killed Perks with the bounce of Brand, all that damage coming in. And now look at the minimap here. Kira goes for a ward, a pink ward, and Mithy wastes his last ward right there next to River. So he has no more wards on Sidestone, so he can't ward Baron Pit. You'll see he goes around Baron Pit and he tries to maybe do something top lane with Smurf. And what the team does is they coordinate backs, Kira backed, so he can get full mana, and Stayos backed, and they leave Miracle to hold top lane, right? And then they just go for the Baron afterwards. It's a really good call.
So so is this a good play by ANX, or should G2 have expected this? Or predicted this somehow?
I guess Nox said that they had wanted to do the Baron sneak even earlier, so this is like something that they do, I think, is another thing. So it's just in general, a lot of the mistakes this game were not being familiar or not having scouted Nox.
That sounds to be the case.
Also, ANX's comp has a lot of damage. Like Brand has a lot of damage, especially the build he went, and Anivia has a lot of damage because a lot of it is kind of like sustained over time, which is always better at killing Baron than like a burst champion. Yeah. So I think this composition is naturally very good at taking, and Elise is really good at taking Baron anyway because she can use Spiderlings to tank damage, some of the damage. You know, so I mean, I think this is like a composition, and given the team ANX, and they've done this before, I think, in the tournament, hadn't they?
Yeah, they did it against against Rocks.
If I was G2, I would.
No, against CLG. CLG, sorry.
Yeah. If I was G2, I'd have a ward on there at like 22 minutes. You know, you can't risk that shit. You know, especially when you're 0-2 down, man. You got to play super light. You got to just play controlled and safe, like no risks, man. If I'm G2 and I'm 0-2, I'm like, nah, no risks.
This is
just ward that shit. Ward that shit, man.
This is your typical rush B strat.
Yeah. Okay. So.
So do we move on? I think there's not much.
Yeah, I think one of the things there is one thing I wanted to say as well is that despite the fact they took the first Baron off a sneak, I think the way they took the second Baron is actually really clean, and I think we should definitely like compliment ANX. I don't know if we have a clip on this, but it's like just as it spawns. Yeah. So I mean, they catch Perks in the mid lane because he's over aggressively clearing the wave, which again another symptom of the kind of.
And then they use the wall with the poppy.
Yeah, they use the poppy. Yeah, they use the poppy W to stop Trick being able to ward hop over the wall, which I think is super good. Like,
that was clutch.
I mean, it's not like a very complicated, champion interaction, but just like the presence of mind to know that they can take the Baron when it's like they're close to 50-50, and Smurf can just walk and be like, nah, press W, he's never going over the wall. Like it's a free Baron. I think ANX has shown some of the best Baron taking presence of mind of like any team this tournament. You know, like we've seen some really boosted Barons, boosted Baron base. We've seen people like, you know, like, I think this was pretty good. Yeah,
I think
the
what
way
I like
China
about
is
ANX,
just scrimming everyone and ruining Baron calls. It's great.
Yeah.
What I like about ANX is that they seem to be all comfortable with each other. They seem to have clear comms, and they know like what like everyone needs to do in certain situations. I like that about a team.
That was something that the INTZ analyst on Reddit said. He made some comment about how he was really glad that ANX came and not Lion in the end. Because Lion is more the stereotypical, just like force lanes type of.
And that's not going to work on the international stage.
Yeah.
With less coordination and team play.
Actually, Lion, if you watch that final, that qualification match, it's a 3-2, and Lion wins their 2 games off of mechanical outplays completely, and the games that ANX won are off of like finding good skirmishes, finding good team fights. So like. I was happy they made it because like they were the better strategical team and they're showing up. So
Okay, so does anyone have anything else to say about this game, or should we move on to the CLG Rocks game? Okay, so CLG Rocks
draft.
Aurelion Sol.
Yay, Aurelion Sol.
Okay,
who didn't see this coming?
So I want to be. Let's try to place ourselves in the minds of Rocks Tigers and into the mind of NoFade. You see on Twitter that CLG's coach Zix is begging the community to figure out like the Aurelion Sol bug. Okay, you know who he loves the champion and is really good at it, and everyone bans it against him.
Also, he played it at MSI, so he definitely watched those games, and he definitely saw who. So even if he doesn't watch NA, the fact that he watches like international tournaments, he watches international tournaments. He would have seen that who he plays Aurelion Sol.
Yep.
And we know that this champion is an S tier mid lane champion right now.
I think something to highlight also is this was a point that Samsung made actually in one of their interviews, is that the difference in preparing for best of 1 versus best of 3, it's actually easier to prepare for best of 1, but you have to change your mindset to make sure that you're playing in the most comfortable situation possible, as opposed to like coming up with specific comps or like specific things to do against specific champions. So something like this, to me, it's just, this seems like something you would do if you were playing a best of series, is that you would let the Sol through and see how it went. But in a group stage where you play like 6 games, it seems really off is all.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you also give them the Nidalee, which is one of the most banned champions in the tournament, with the Aurelion Sol. So you literally have the whole map to you gave away the whole map to the enemy.
And your top lane is a losing matchup.
For an Olaf and Nami ban.
And you
can just push bot lane the entire time as well.
And top lane.
Yeah.
And top lane. Like,
I mean,
Poppy can't push into Gnar. She can just get pushed in.
Yeah, the laning phase is like, it's just going to be really rough for Rocks. Because
that's the other thing.
Caitlyn, Alistar, I don't know whether or not Caitlyn and Alistar can push Karma Ezreal. I guess they can't. But I don't think it really matters. Yeah, I don't think it really matters when you have such an overwhelming push advantage from the jungle mid. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you would expect a roam at some point. I mean, we'll get to the roam, but I think you have to expect a roam at some point. I don't think it's on Rocks to expect the roam at level 1. I don't fault them to die. I don't fault them for dying to that room. But do we want to talk about the draft, or should we just move on to the room? Anyone have anything else to say about this draft?
I mean, maybe the last thing to say is it's a slightly carry-oriented meta for top lane, and putting Smeb, your best player, your best carry, on Poppy, maybe doesn't like really empower your composition or your like playstyle.
Do we think what else could they have played here? Like Jace was open. Do we think Jace is good?
I think Jace is fine into Gnar.
But you need another support, in my opinion, if you're gonna run Jace.
Yeah.
Need like an Alistar here if you're gonna run Jace, for example.
They have Rek'Sai though, who operates in sort of the same way as Alistar.
But you still need like a playmaking support with like a CC if you're gonna run Malzahar Jace, in my opinion.
Because they won't have hard engage unless they want to play like a pure poke comp.
Rox has been playing a lot of poke comps, so I don't know if it's something they didn't want to do. I think the bigger issue is just that you're shutting down. Poppy is going to have like a really good TP, and I think that this comp from CLG kind of telegraphs that they're going to just like push out and then go bot, basically.
I just noticed that.
That's fair.
I'm gonna show this clip now. The level 1. I just noticed that I think Kuro makes a big mistake here.
Let's see.
He uses Malefic Visions on Huhi. Right here, I pause it. Which means, level 1, you no longer have any spells to push lane.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What? Malefic Visions does no damage level 1. What the hell?
Yeah, and this is like how you play Malzahar at level 1 is you put Malefic Visions on a target, auto-attack it, it spreads, auto-attack it, it spreads, auto-attack. And by using it on Huhi, basically Huhi got all 6 minions when Kuro had 0.
Okay, so I think here you need. I think you need to know that he can roam, because
level 1 though, I mean, really, it's such a hard call to make. Like,
why would
Huhi?
Why would Huhi like go towards his right side?
I guess.
And he was gone for so long.
Maybe they think he was going to put a ward on blue. Maybe they thought he was going to put a ward on blue or something, or maybe they thought he was taking a camp.
Yeah, I think that's the
it's like, that would be my first reaction if I saw this. You know, like, I didn't expect them to roam bot.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a good play by CLG.
I was watching the top stream, so
you're like watching the top stream.
I saw Huhi move, and I was like, what the fuck's he doing? And then I saw him go down the river, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing, Huhi? And then I saw it, and I was like, this guy's a genius.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's
so some people saying that he would go right side to take Raptors. You don't take in like the past few months. You don't take your junglers camps except for bot lane taking Krugs, or if it was a lane swap Grump. Lane swaps don't exist anymore. But yeah, in this early on, you don't take the Raptors from your jungler, because you put your jungler behind an XP and gold.
But you
always take the enemy's Raptors.
Yeah. I'm just gonna mention this. You can take one Raptor only, one small Raptor from your jungler, and you'll get level 2 from one wave.
Okay, maybe.
I think that's where Rox thought he was.
Yeah.
I think the thing about Aurelion Sol just is that it's super good in this meta because it first of all just denies all mid lane control.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it really hard for the enemy mid laner to roam, but it also just makes it hard for a team like SKT, and we'll probably talk about this later, who just like control through mid as well.
Yeah,
sure.
So
I think also, like, I don't want to spend too much time in this game because most of this game was just like CLG roaming all over the shop. But there's a couple of things that really stood out for me this game. Is I think Afro really stepped it up quite a lot. I think his bard performance wasn't very good, and you know, you could say like, oh, he's sick and whatever, but apparently half the player pool is sick, so it's whatever. You know, like, you don't get 3 points for that. But
except for Splice, they just suck.
Yeah. And I think that Afro really stepped it up this game. He was looking really good. He's very decisive. His Alistair mechanics were on point. But also, I think that while Smeb had some really, really good TPs, it's starting to become a pattern that when Rock's fall behind, Smeb sits in a brush and looks for a brush camp. And I think that if people have good scouting, they'll notice this. And I think it's going to be really important for teams who play against Rox now to notice that. I think Rox has shown some clear weaknesses that the early game is not looking as clean. But I definitely think that people should be highlighting that. Also, could we just shout out to CLG's vision control this game? Like, I mean, did anyone notice how clean CLG's vision control was? Like, really that no, like Rox had no wards in river past like 50 minutes. You know, it was so clean. I think definitely we should highlight that. So let's move on to SKT Flash Wars. So I actually want to talk a little bit about this before I open this to the rest of the group. I'm sorry, guys. I know it's really selfish, but so.
So
I have a lot to say about Flash Wars, how they operate as a team and how SKT operate as a team. So one of the things that we talked about and that we've been talking about a lot is how Flash Wars have this like really good early game and how they operate through like this really strong jungle mid synergy. Now, when you're SKT, one of the things that's really bothered me throughout the tournament is this storyline. It's this narrative that SKT is this perfect team and SKT is back and SKT is looking like favorites to win the tournament. I actually heard those words on the cast. I'm not sure who said it, but whoever said that, I think really needs to start looking at how. yeah, I think whoever said that really start looking at the way SKT's playing, because that's such a lazy storyline from my perspective. Because one of the things that we've seen in this group is SKT for sure has the weakest group, I think. I definitely think this group is the weakest group, and I think the way SKT plays has shown some real weaknesses. I think people have been just brushing over the fact that Blank has absolutely no synergy with Faker, and Faker's been punished before. It didn't matter, but Faker was punished before in this group. Not even like this was how SKT got exploited in Korea, let alone at Worlds, and it's happening again at Worlds, and the same thing happened, and I would expect somebody to point this out, and it was never pointed out, and it's really disappointing for me that this was not highlighted. And I think I called this I think I called this yesterday, that Flash Wolves were in a really good position to take this game.
We talked about it together.
Yeah,
I think literally everyone called it, so it's not important.
Yeah, but I think that it's for me it was super disappointing to see the storyline that SKT was this like perfect team, and like I would have liked to have seen more of a highlight on this jungle mid matchup, and to see like Blank really for me is just. I think I can't see a reason why they would ever play Blank for the rest of this tournament now. Yeah. I mean, does anyone have any thoughts on Blank versus Bengi? I can't see it. I can't see the justification.
So if I'm SKT, if like viewers should know that when Bengi plays with Faker, while Bengi doesn't know how to like path in an efficient manner, he does play really well with Faker, and he knows how to cover for Faker's recklessness. And like communicate as to like where the enemy jungler is. And so versus Flash Wolves that play a huge like a heavy invade mid jungle style, I would have expected them to play Bengi this game. And we're now seeing that the meta is definitely about how to empower the jungler and playing around mid. I think to cover your like SKT's weakness, they need to play Bengi. They can't play Blank anymore if they want to make it a really deep run at Worlds.
Yeah,
I forget who I was talking to, but it was something about how looking at the statistics of Blank versus Bengi, it actually showed that the side lanes are much more likely to get ahead when Bengi plays, and mid lane is much more likely to get ahead when Blank plays. So I don't know if that's So like, despite the fact that you're saying that their synergy isn't super good, I think part of it is that Faker, especially in spring season, spent much more time looking out for kind of what Blank needs to do and guiding him through the jungle in certain ways by like leaving his lane, putting down vision, things like this. Whereas I think that in summer, there was a lot less of that. I think for whatever reason, there was just a general laziness in the Blank-Faker relationship much more often. I will say, however, that even if you're highlighting the fact that they, again, I think that SKT is much better at an adaptation type situation where they will like maybe fumble in this area. But if we see SKT versus Flash Wolves again, they're going to see a different type of setup, even if they play Blank and Faker again.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll be interested to see if Blank will be able to, or like the Blank Faker being able to work better, because I don't think it's completely Blank. I do think it's also partly Faker.
Sure.
And his need to play forward. It's kind of maybe like Perks, where he just has this obsession to play forward. And we have like a couple of clips of how I think Faker and maybe a bit like Blank being at error here. For losing mid priority.
So is Faker the EU the Korean Perks Kappa?
Well, I would just say that Faker traditionally has always kind of played that way, where he's able to judge his damage and things like that really well. It's just that against teams that are kind of expecting it more and have junglers with slightly more creative pathing, something to note about Karsa is actually he wasn't playing extremely aggressively in the LMS playoffs. He was playing much more around securing side lane vision control, and protecting his side lanes in that regard. And so he comes to this tournament and he starts ganking mid much more. So I think that was a bit surprising and difficult to scout as well.
I think part of that is, I just want to follow up on the Karsa point, is that I think you're right. I think part of the reason for that was because what I saw from the AHQ Flash Wars series, particularly in LMS players, was that Flash Wars really adapted their strategy to take down what AHQ were doing, and AHQ were playing really hard around Ziv, and I think Flash Wars just just like built this strategy to shut down Ziv. And I think that was part of the reason why you saw Karsa spend much more time around the side lanes. But I do think that they did
it against J-Team too.
So. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think it's definitely. I think that in a vacuum, the way I see Flash Wolves in the most comfortable is when Karsa plays around mid. So, yeah, I think it's. But you're right. I mean, if you only watch like the playoffs, I think it's difficult to scout the way Karsa will plays. But I think we can move on to the next bit. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and this is an example of how there's either pure communication between the mid and jungle from SKT, or just it being completely like it was communicated, but Faker just not respecting that information.
Yeah.
So they don't have any wards in Flashwell's jungle except for one, and they don't see him go over it. And he doesn't really have anyone to cover for him. Like his jungler is on the other side of the map, and Karma was like going back to lane. And I think he should have maybe played towards more towards like the right side. But he like the problem here is that it's not like he was just standing in lane. He was going forward and being aggressive when he didn't really have his jungler or his support near him. If you're playing a lane, you really don't want to be making a play, a risky play like that, when you don't really have your jungler around you. I think like this play would have been fine if maybe Olaf was around
Wraiths.
River or like at Wraiths, Raptors.
He's a Gromp right now. So you want the other one as well, right?
Yeah, and we'll show the other one to like emphasize this
Compliment, yeah.
point.
I believe.
So here they ping.
Wait, let me.
So
show it
they
first.
see Lee and Aurelian in just a second.
Yeah.
So Olaf is going to see. Do they ping it? They ping him, right?
Wait, actually,
I'm pretty sure they.
let me go back a bit to see if they ping it.
Yeah, so they know Lee here. Like Olaf sees Lee in their jungle, and Aurelian is probably here too. And they also like question mark to say like, oh, they might be here.
Yeah.
And then, but like Faker, why is he standing here?
Faker sees Aurelian here and doesn't see Lee, so.
Yeah, but should he be positioning here when he should know that Lee's on this side?
He should
And
be
he
on,
does, and
he
one
should be on
and
the
once
left
again,
side.
yeah, and once again, his jungler was at red, and Karma wasn't there either.
Yeah, he should
So
be at
it's
right
just
side.
these like mispositions,
Left side. I mean.
and not really respecting the information that he has from Blank or like that's available on the map.
Yeah, like Faker here needs to be on the left side of the lane, not the right side. Because like by being on the right side, you just let Lee Sin close on you either with Q or a ward hop or anything really.
Yeah, it's obviously a great gank from
Yeah,
Flash Wolves
it is really good.
to capitalize on it. And this was like good from Faker.
Yeah, I think Faker did a really good job of like almost outplaying a lot of these ganks.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he still has like some mechanics.
He puts himself in a position where
he
has
should
to
never
do
put
this.
himself in that position, really.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of his thing now. I don't know.
it is.
But at what point do you start going, well, you know, as good as you are, like teams are getting to the point now where being smarter is far more important than having good mechanics.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that I don't think Faker is a dumb player. Like I don't think Faker is not a smart player. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, I think that's it's more that he thinks it's more that he used to be smarter than everyone as well.
Yeah.
Like his judgment, I think, is the thing that it's more than the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they just snowball from this game from the Aurelian Soul.
Mm-hmm.
Not much SKT could do about the game from this point. Oh, you had a point about side wave control, right?
Yeah, Kelsey had a point about this game.
Yeah, I expect. I don't think that Flash Wolves are that strong of a team in terms. There were a lot of ways that SKT, if they wanted to play off of sideways more, could have gotten back into the game. And part of it is just that Flash Wolves are so willing to give up control in the side lanes. Like there would be times where MMD would just force push out the wave, and then I think SKT are much smarter about like controlling their push and timing it with objectives much more. Like here, it just seemed really awkward, in particular, for MMD to push out that wave all the way, and then he goes and I think he gets Krugs or something, and then he just backs and
he does nothing.
I don't know. Yeah, he does nothing with the push. They have no pressure down there. There's no like vision down there or anything. It's just really awkward.
And he does it again here.
Yeah, he does it several times throughout the game. So I don't know. Like for me, it's just that there were options for SKT and they chose not to take them. I still think that. I mean, Jarge made the point about SKT not getting far in the tournament, but it's like, are there any really good teams that contest them? Is really my question.
Sure.
Like,
I'll answer that.
There aren't a lot of. I mean, this isn't a strong group, but what would be like your strongest group would be my question.
I think we need to wait for week 2, honestly, to start seeing teams really perform. Honestly,
I mean, so I actually was a little bit on a Flash was hype, so I will say that maybe like saying that SKT won't make it deep was a bit of a zealous. I will say that I don't know if they can make it past the semis. I don't think they're a lock for the finals like most people seem to think. I think that. At least stylistically, some of the teams that we're likely to see in the semis have much better jungle exploitation skill. I guess I don't really know how to say it, but I think SKT's weaknesses in the jungle will definitely be. I think it's gonna be really hard for them to make it past the semis, just because we've seen that the way the meta is developing, that's a real focal point for a lot of teams. I think. I'd give like the edge to like TSM. I would still give the edge to Rox, even though Rox is early game, it doesn't look that good. I think stylistically they're much better suited to take down SKT in this meta. But yeah, I think I don't think that Career is as far ahead as maybe people expected. That's definitely something we've seen. Mm-hmm. So does anyone have anything else to say about this game? Because we're going to move on.
Yeah.
So, sorry, does anyone have anything?
No, I was going to say I'll open up on the last game. Last game of the day was IMA versus C9. Not much. We're going to blaze past this game because it's like nothing really important about it. Basically, if you didn't watch the game, and I know Nasser and Jarge were falling asleep at this point, it was not really an interesting game. Who would have known that if you play towards topside, you can get towards topside when you have a top carry, you can get him ahead and get him to snowball. And yeah, I mean, I may just die, like slowly die this game. And they just don't die faster because their comp is like innately tanky with the Vladimir, with the what else did they even have? They had the Vladimir, they had I can't even remember. They had like a really tanky comp. Yeah, they had the Vladimir, they had the Tank Echo, the Rek'Sai, and the Tahm Kench. So they had like this really innately tanky comp that prevented C9 from ever like doing like tower dives and taking more than 2 people. So like they kept like taking one member, chipping down a turret, getting an objective, slowly bleeding out IMA. But it was pretty slow because of IMA's comp. I think C9 played this well.
I also think that, just in general, I may have kind of gone the correct way about drafting in this tournament, though, which is maybe not picking a comp, but just having picking comfort champions, because like you look at every single one of their drafts, it's like, this is my favorite champion. This is my favorite champion.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be a trend I think, at this tournament.
So I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I think that's a good strategy for BO1, which is why a lot of teams are trending toward it. It's also allowed IMA to stall out a lot of these games a lot more than I think they would normally as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to questions now. So if anybody has any interesting questions, put them in Twitch chat. I'll try and sift through them and pick some up. But I have a couple here that I want to ask. So I'm gonna open up with a question from glord21. It says, do you think what you said about China practice culture last year could be applied to Europe at the moment?
For Kelsey.
Oh yeah, this is a big topic.
For Kelsey. So I guess
we can spend a bit of time on this.
So let's talk a bit about like China and European practice culture, because there's been some stuff coming out about European practice culture as well. So, but you can open this, Kelsey.
I'm actually going to be writing an article about some of the issues with Europe. Well, that will come out hopefully this week. But I think you can apply certain things to European and Chinese practice culture. I think that they're bad for different reasons.
Sure.
I think one thing that I really like to highlight is that there are problems in European and Chinese infrastructure that stem from opposite sources, but ultimately amount to the same thing, which puts a lot of emphasis on the dynamics of the teams themselves and the players themselves, which I think that last year, Fnatic and Origin had really, really strong dynamics within their teams. This year, Royal and EDG look good because they have really strong, focused team captains, and they're able to get a good personality setup in the way that they're working. So I think that's part of what makes teams a little bit tenuous sometimes.
Sure. Anyone else want to talk about European practice culture?
Yeah.
I guess, Nasa, you're in a good place to talk about this.
Yeah, so I started off with Origin last year as a volunteer analyst, and so for people that want to know, traditionally in EU and NA, and what NA still does but EU doesn't, is that you have 2 blocks per day, 3 games each, and sometimes you might have a third block in the night. But EU changed that this year to 1 block a day for supposedly 5 games. But so when I came back to work in EU and saw that this system had changed, I'm like, okay, at least they're playing 5, maybe sometimes 6 games a day. But what I noticed really fast is that people would FF after 4 and rarely 3 games. So I'm like, wait, so you're playing 4 games a day, and that's maybe less than 4 hours? Then what do you do for the rest of the day? Okay, so VOD review, maybe a 1 hour for VOD review. And then outside of that, just solo queue.
Yeah.
So then you have so in a day, you work 5 hours really a day, and then say you sleep 8 hours, and then what do you do for the rest of that time? I feel like it's pretty wasted.
Solo queue and watch TV.
A lot of that also is that last year I really feel like Origin and Fnatic were kind of leaders in innovation of strategy and things like this. In Europe, we had a lot of teams really just struggling to get their players to work together well. Yeah. And maybe that's scrims, and maybe that's personality, and maybe that's the fact that most teams don't even have a manager. But it's... You have to get to that point before you can start coming up with some of the creative things that Europe was kind of good at last year's Worlds. Sure. And they didn't have that, so...
Yeah.
So
the problem is that there's an overwhelming player, because either due to lack of staff, or maybe the staff not being stronger personality-wise, players tend to lead the teams. And that can be a good thing, like with Origin, when you have a team that wants to work together, that has brilliant minds, or it could be a bad thing, as we see with a lot of the rumors we hear about, conflicts going around on teams, and scrims leading to only 4 games. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Sure. I mean, I actually want to talk a little bit about so one of the teams I think has definitely stepped up this year in terms of the practice schedule is TSM. And I can speak firsthand about this because I was there. And I lived with Pod, the head coach, in the summer split as well, for some of the summer split. And I can tell you that the way TSM operates is they get up in the morning and they have a 1 hour VOD review before the day even begins, where they go over a professional game, and they talk about a concept, or they talk about a team, or they talk about one of their scrims. And then what they do is they have the 3 hour block, and then they have lunch, and then a 3 hour block, and they have a bit of a break, and then they have another 2 game block at the end of the day. So they're doing 3 blocks a day, every day. And they scrim 4 days. And they don't take a day off. This is what I've seen. They do not take a day off. They don't have a day, because usually what happens is every team will have a day off a week. But what they did in the summer split is they stopped taking a day off. And then I'm not 100% sure about how they stepped it up for like bootcamp and wilds and all this kind of thing, but one would expect that they kind of carry on with this same structure. And I think that their level of play domestically and internationally has really shown that like hard work just plays off. And we've seen, like a lot of people talk about this, but time invested has a direct correlation with level of improvement. And I think that this is something that the EU teams can learn from.
Yeah, I think sure, but what EU needs to do is get to a point where they can even start thinking about that.
Yeah,
and that's not where they are right now. Another big thing I think people maybe have not touched upon is that the teams that are at Worlds right now, specifically G2 and H2K, don't really have the best of team dynamics.
Yeah.
So like with Expect, that's a big flaw in their team dynamic. With the way Perks plays with the rest of his team in this current meta is a flaw in their dynamic. H2K has a very linear style that also doesn't really fit in with how the meta is played right now. So sure, the infrastructure in EU definitely has a part to do with it, not just for these 3 teams at Worlds, but for the rest of the teams in the LCS and how they perform. Yeah.
I would say that you have to take each European team on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, that's what I was going to.
Yeah, I think that's what you're trying to say, is you can't just like generalize to a single European problem.
It's definitely like infrastructure is definitely a problem, and I really hope that Hussein and I, the Misfits head coach, can work towards improving some of these things, not just with Misfits, but with like the entire LCS, with like the LCS scrim culture in the EU. But yeah, basically each of these teams have problems, specific problems that don't generalize towards the rest of EU teams.
And for Splice, it could be as simple as their group sucks. Like
straight they have the hardest group for sure. I think it sucks for them. I think they could make it out of other groups, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
It really, a lot of things are difficult to discuss with this. Like I felt like even last year, each of the Chinese teams had individual problems that you can't really just generalize over one. Though those are harder to talk about because obviously there's less information in English to talk about those. So
let's move on to the next question. So Hergath asks, do you feel like it's too easy to snowball with smaller leads nowadays? So I actually want to open this up a bit more kind of generally about closing in general and how the game has become more team oriented, because didn't want to open this up because I have some thoughts on this, but I want to open it out to you guys first. Okay.
I talked a lot for last question.
Snowballing leads.
Yeah, so I think definitely the way, so this is something I think we're going to see more in the future, and this is part of the kind of the gap is closing concept that's being thrown around right now, and I actually think that the gap is closing, and I think part of the reason for that is the way is definitely part of it is Riot's balance philosophy in the way they're trying to take the game away from more about mechanical outplays and individual skill and kind of funnel it more towards teamwork. And there's a discussion to be had about whether or not that's good or whether or not that's bad. It kind of depends how you want to see the game. But I think it's fine. I think it's an acceptable balance philosophy. I also think that the game has become a lot more scripted as people become more aware of the way the game should be played. It's less about kind of kills and more about pressure, translating that pressure into taking leads, because people now know that they can't take a fight, which means they concede that kind of that control, and that's what creates that pressure. So I think that as teams get smarter, it's going to become more and more about how well-rounded your team is, and it's going to become more about how your kind of individual flaws and your team-wide flaws, like we see in SKT, and like we see in every team has got like I don't think any team in this tournament looks really clean. So I definitely think that it is getting easier to snowball, but only because of the way that the game is being played and the way the game is being understood. I think there's a much better understanding of the game now than there ever has been.
I think. So first of all, I would contest that it's a lot easier to generally close on leads and things, because I think right now we're seeing a really interesting interaction between poke comps and AoE kind of CC comps, And we're seeing a mixture between, for example, like Emily Rand and I will discuss in the press room, and she really thinks you shouldn't pick a scaling comp. Like, it's too risky. But we're seeing that in occasional situations, teams like AHQ, teams like Rocks Tigers are having more success with the scaling sort of CC AoE comps, especially with the Baron bait focus becoming really, really strong. Baron is just really strong. And if you can either risk going bottom or going to a side lane to try to pull people off of Baron, or you can just contest the Baron. And most often it's going to just be less risky to just contest the Baron. Mm-hmm. So that's why a lot of teams will pick comps that are just better in AoE teamfights. And that's why you see a lot of situations where you aren't necessarily closing on a lead very effectively. So I think the strength of the Baron itself makes it maybe not so straightforward to snowball or close on a lead. Also, I'm not sure if, I think it's maybe the understanding of the game is better than it's ever been, but I would say that there are also more ways in which you can interpret how the game can be played to an extent as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to extend what Kelsey said about scaling. I think for some teams, having one scaling element, like a Jinx, like a Tristana, we've seen Jinx, I think, twice or thrice already in this world. And I think that if you know the other team isn't really known like this super heavy early game pressure team, and you can get to mid game rather unscathed, you can use that scaling to your advantage. So I do disagree with Emily in that regard. That I think that some scaling elements are fine as long as you don't go full scaling and really screw yourself.
Ness, did you have anything to say about this, or should we move on to the next question?
I think you guys covered everything.
Okay, so here's another one. I think this is more towards Kelsey again. So do you think RNG has come together and has the potential to go really far in this tournament? So what's your take on RNG?
I think it depends on the game you look at, because the first two games, they were playing things that were more in tune with how they played in spring. And I think part of that was just that UCI was able to realize that most of the bottom lanes in the group he can just 1v2, as sad as that is. So he was kind of, it was all right for Mata to start roaming more. I don't think Mata has actually been that good at laning lately. He's been much better with roams and syncing up with MLXG, because MLXG is kind of a jungler who will just do random stuff, so it's better to have, straight up, I don't understand his pathing most of the time. They will just go together and they'll try to make surprising things happen, and I think that works a lot better with Mata to help secure the vision. And RNG, going to this tournament, had the highest wards per minute of any regular season team. A lot of that was actually on Mata and on Xiaohu. I think the other issue is that Xiaohu's confidence came up better. He made some comment I realized I'm the only Chinese mid laner at this tournament, so I need to just get over whatever is bothering me. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's just, there are certain elements that are coming together, but you'll start to see them get more contested when they have to play compositions that they're not necessarily the most familiar with. Like in the Samsung game, they played this Siege comp, which first of all was super risky and they didn't know how to play it. Yeah. And second of all, you start to get to these other bottom lanes where maybe UCI can't 1v2, and there might be this conflict between these two styles of RNG again.
Does anyone else want to follow up on the RNG question?
No, I think Kelsey resumed it pretty well. I think we should get to the last one.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do one last question. So Risen Lazarus asks, what are the adaptations we can expect to see for picks like Aurelion Sol, Kennen, Syndra, and the Poach 3 ban junglers? Can preparation or review help, or are these champs just best in their slot for the tournament?
I mean, counter picks always exist.
Yeah, exactly. I think counter picks always exist. I think in a BO5 setting, they definitely become more interesting, because you can go into a game and say okay, let's test this thing out where we leave X champion open, and we've done it in scrims. Let's attempt to counter it with Y. you know. And in a BO1, it's something you can't really afford to do as much, so that's why you see the bans. And in a BO5, like if you do it, if it doesn't work out, you can just default to your old strategy of banning it, you know. And it's a BO5, so you just didn't lose after one game, or even maybe you won but you didn't perform as well, so you want to ban it anyways. But I think the BO5 setting is very different from the BO1, and it changes quite a bit on the adaptations. Specifically about the champions, I don't think that. I mean, for Syndra, there's Vlada obviously, and there's maybe long range mages. For Aurelion Sol, I'm not sure, and for Kennen, I think there's some good matchups in top lane that can deal with him.
I think Aurelion Sol counters playstyles more than anything, and you can just get so much map control off of Aurelion Sol.
Yeah.
In general, so I think that's more the issue than a direct champion counter.
Yeah, and one thing you have to consider is whether these teams or players are like comfortable in the matchup. Like, have they played versus Aurelion Sol before? Have they played this counter matchup before? So there was a suggestion that Twisted Fate is good into Aurelion Sol, and I agree with that because it's easy for you to turn off his W, and you can, kind of follow his roles. And once Twisted Fate gets some items and levels, he's able to quickly clear the waves that Aurelion Sol pushes into him. But it's about like, okay, so that might be good, but have they played it in scrims? Are they comfortable playing that matchup? So this is what we're going to see now, going from week 1 to week 2, and then week 2 into brackets. Is we're going to see these teams scrim, try these matchups out, try to find counters, either straight counters or composition counters, and that's going to be interesting to watch, see develop.
So my take on it is that I think we have to remember this is still like the first week, and everyone's playing best of 1. So what we're seeing here is what everyone's prepped for, like the tournament so far. But what we're going to see is now there's a couple of days break, people are going to start scrimming again and experimenting with new things, because maybe some teams didn't realize how strong Syndra was, maybe some teams didn't realize how strong like champions like Lee Sin was. And so what we're going to start seeing is people experimenting with like counters to these picks and counter strategies, and some teams will just stick with the meta and they'll just polish that. But maybe some teams who are behind, maybe we'll see G2 pull something out, maybe we'll see like Perks open up his champion pool and maybe go for a more risky pick in the mid lane to try and kind of snowball off kind of more of an individual performance than a team performance. So there's things we'll see from that, but I think definitely I expect to see much of the same in the second week. I don't know about how you guys feel about this, but that's how I see it. I think we should expect to see a lot of the same things. And
just to strengthen your point, we have to remember that this patch wasn't put competitive before Worlds. So and scrims aren't always like the best indicator of what's strong. So I feel like that's relevant to mention, that champion pools are still being figured out, even because the champions just haven't been played in competitive before this first week of Worlds. So
sure. So has anyone else got anything to say, or do we want to wrap it up? I'm going to take that as we wrap it up. Okay, so that's it from us, guys. Thanks for watching. Remember that we'll be posting this VOD to YouTube as soon as possible. We'll let you guys know when that's up. Thanks very much for Kelsey for coming on. You've been a great guest. Do you want to give any shout outs? Where can people find you, see your stuff?
Just check me out at TheScoreEsports. It's basically the easiest thing. So there you go.
Excellent. Shaka, any final words?
You can obviously find my stuff on LolKing, or just by following me on Twitter. I always post there. But probably just looking at LolKing's news is easier, because I shit post a lot on Twitter. So
fair enough. Nasa?
I hope you guys have been enjoying these. We'll be back before week 2 begins with episode 2 of the War Room. We're going to talk about like broader things and bigger picture, sort of like what these questions have been talking about.
Sure.
And yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, follow this channel on Twitch to keep up to date with everything.
Okay, so that's it from us. I've been your host, Jarge. You can follow me on Twitter at Jarge, followed by 2 underscores. I will say it's probably not the best place for analysis right now, given that I'm trying to save most of my interesting thoughts for the broadcast. Mostly just kind of memeing on Twitter at the moment. But yeah, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitch, subscribe, and thanks very much for watching. And we'll see you guys at some point next week.
See ya.